Hello, good morning. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Good morning, all of you. Myself, GB Jadeja from Government Polytechnic Gandhinagar. I welcome all the participants on behalf of Government Polytechnic Gandhinagar. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome all of you in the opening ceremony this morning to the AICT Training and Learning Atal Academy sponsored 1 week faculty development program on machine learning concept with Python. It is jointly organized by Atal Academy and Government Polytechnic Gandhinagar from 5th July 2021 to 9th July 2021. I am thankful to the Chief Patron of this FDP, Ms. Rupal P. Merchant Ma'am, Honorable Principal Government Polytechnic Gandhinagar, and Ms. Manisha P. Mehta Ma'am. She is the Chief Coordinator and Head of the Computer Engineering Department, Government Polytechnic Gandhinagar. So, and our industry resource of this FTP is TCS Ion, which is the strategic unit of Tata Consultancy Services. The objective of this training aims at imparting knowledge and training on the fundamentals of machine learning concept with Python. The targeted participants are faculty members and research scholars of AICT's approved institutions. So before beginning FDP, we would like to begin this FDP with a small prayer to Goddess Saraswati for the blessing. So I request all the participants to join small prayer. Now, I request Chief Coordinator of this FDP, Ms. Manisha P. Mehta ma'am, for inauguration and a small speech. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, Ghanshyam sir. Good morning, all who are present over here, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to serve you for 5 days. I hope we all together learn this in during this 5 days. I will not take much more time because we are going to join common inauguration ceremony, which is scheduled at 11 a.m. And the link is already shared in the group. And again, we will share the group. This will be our first technical session. As per AICT, Atal and AICT guideline, we are having a total 14 session. Out of 13 are technical session, and one session is non-technical session. This time we are going to have a IKS session under that. We are also covering a hands-on session with TCS Ion as a partner. And there are three things we have to be careful. As per Atal guideline, we are having a 80% attendance compulsory for all the participants. So please make sure that you attend all the sessions. Second, the quiz, we are going to fire a quiz, and 60 percentage marks are required to get the certificates. So we will float the quiz in the MS team itself here in the assignment section. So you have to fill those assignment, and if you get 60 percentage of under that assignment, you will get the certificate. Third thing, you have to fill the feedback on the Atal portal. It will be live on the last day. Once you do all these three things, then and then you are able to get the certificate. You will not get the certificate immediately. Please understand, we have to upload all the attendance at the end of the workshop. So maybe on Friday or maybe on next Monday, we have to submit the assignment marks. And after submitting assignment marks, you have to submit your feedback. After having feedback on your Atal portal within 24 hours or 36 hours, Atal will automatically generate a certificate. So you will get the certificate. And again, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to serve you for this 5 days. And if you have any queries, you can ask us anytime. You can also drop message in this teams. In teams, they are having a chat facility, and you are also requested to join using given credential wise us only. because based on that credential, we are able to take your attendance. So thank you so much. Enjoy your journey, and all are also requested to join common inauguration function at 11 a.m. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ghanshyam sir, we
Yes,
can
ma'am.
now forward for the day.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now let us begin with the very first session of FTP. The presenter of this session is Mr. D.B. Mehta. He is a lecturer in Information and Technology Department of Government Polytechnic Gandhinagar. He is having more than decade of teaching experience. He also worked in Reliance and Accenture Industries, and he is pursuing PhD in area of machine learning. So we are having a great opportunity to begin our first session with such a eminent personality. So without wasting precious moment, I would like to hand over directly to Mr. D.B. Mehta, sir. Please, sir.
Uh, Good morning, one and all. I am sharing my screen in order to make content more, comprehensible. I hope my voice is coming and screen is visible.
Yes, sir. It is clearly visible and the voice is very clear.
Okay, fine. So today I'm going to talk a little or more about data analytics and artificial intelligence. I'm thankful to organizers and Atal, DT and GP Gandhinagar for giving me this opportunity. This is the outline we are going to cover today in this session. So I'll first give introduction about what is data analytics. Then we will get a little deeper insight about what data analytics is. Then we'll get some intro about artificial intelligence, its relation with machine learning, and more about machine learning. Then we will also have some basic idea about deep learning, and then we'll have a case study which covers artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning algorithms in it. So let's get started. Data analytics, I have covered these four subtopics in it, which is first is definition, of course. Then we will have types of data analytics. We also have which are the measures for data analytics that helps us to, kind of actually conduct the analytics. And then we will also go through what is the difference between data analysis and data analytics. So data analytics is the science of analyzing raw data in order to make conclusions about information. So in companies or industries where you go, there is plenty of information. Even in our institutes and academics, we have plenty of information. But to infer some, conclusive information from it is an important task. So data analytics helps us optimize performance. Let's say if we are talking about industries or academics, we want students results to be better, academical rank overall to be higher and all. So data analytics helps us doing so. Let us take a very straightforward example which says we have database in MySQL, MongoDB, Oracle or SQL Server or whatever. We first collect data. Once collected, we analyze it through charts or some visualization tool or something, and finally we create report that helps us take decision, whichever is for overall good, right? So this is what data analytics all about. I mean, from top view you can say. Now there are types of data analytics, which says descriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics, predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, and when we talk about all these four, descriptive analytics, as described verb is inherent in it. We can say what happened. So we try to describe in this analytics. Then in diagnostic analytics, we try to figure out what really happened inside it. Like we diagnose any software issue or some problem. Whenever it occurs, we try to diagnose. Like doctor also tried to do the same, right? Then next step is to predict what we can do if such scenario continues and what are the measures we can take and all, and how we can take it is covered under prescriptive analytics. So how can we make it happen? So here we are going to decide what are the possibilities, and here we kind of plan out how we can do something. So in terms of doctor, let's say we kind of get prescription So with the help of those medicines, we kind of solve the problem of our medical issue or whatever. So the same applies to business or institute level analytics also. So these are 4 types of analytics. Now there are some measures which helps us get these insights. So measure of location are derived by mean, median and mode. These 3 are very basic and already known to most of us. So these 3 tells us how our data is located. Okay. So where is the center of data, how many frequent items, the most frequent item and etc. are covered here in mode, right? Then there is a mode of dispersion, or you can say spread, in which we have range, interquartile range, variance and standard deviation. See, what I am covering is very, very basic and kind of opening to the whole training. So even if you do not get complete idea of what is here, the upcoming sessions will completely uncover the concepts. So I am just trying to give you brief overview or introduction to introduction about what's coming next. Now there is measure of association involved, which says covariance. So I will try to say a little about the later terms. So range is obvious, maximum minus minimum. So let's say the students in our college have age range starting from 16 to 20. So there is nobody below 16 years and there is nobody above 20 years. Then interquartile range divides the whole range into 4 quarters, right? So it kind of have 4 set of values. I mean 4 minimum and 4 maximum. Everything exclusive of each other, right? So to explain this a little better, I will like to take Excel sheet and some data. Let's say if we have data of 10, 20, 30 up to let's say 120. So first quarter is this much, second quarter is 40 to 60, third quarter is this, and overall we have 4 quarters. So that way we have 4 quartiles. So in this the minimum value is 10 and maximum value is 30. But for this one minimum value is 40 and this is 60. So in each quarter we have minimum and maximum, and that kind of generates interquartile range. So when we talk about range, we have 10 and 120 in this case. But when we talk about interquartile range, it is per quarter there will be minimum and maximum that we can call interquartile ranges. Okay. Then we have variance and standard deviation. Then the covariance is something that tells how much something is co-varying with other. Let's say if one is let's say we have 2 variables x and y. And in this x and y, we have values like this. So we can say that both are varying pretty much linearly, like they are pretty much aligned. But if I say the value of this one is 21, then 10, then 3, 56 and 10, then there is not much kind of covariance across each other. So there are standard formulas which helps us figure out what are the covariance between x and y. If it is, let's say, aligning, then its value is close to 1, and otherwise it is in -1, right? If it is negatively related, then it will be like that. So these are measures of data analytics, which are kind of important when you are analyzing the data initially, and then you are planning to perform data analytics. There is confusion between data analytics and data analysis. That's why I have decided to kind of cover it separately. So data analytics is about decision making, whereas data analysis is from so this Venn diagram kind of helps us understand it even more. So data analysis is a larger scope than data analytics, and it's a kind of subset, right? So in data analysis, we try to process. First, there is important step called cleansing. So if your data is garbled or it has some wrong value or missing values, in all those cases, our conclusions and overall decision may be wrong. At that time, we need kind of cleansing. So data analysis is all about taking data and analyzing it, whereas data analytics is more about taking decision also, right? So for data analytics, we have tools like Excel, R, Python, SAS, Apache Spark, Tableau, and all that. Whereas for data analysis, we have OpenRefine, RapidMiner, Google Fusion Table is very popular example for data analysis, and we have Node XL as well. So these are the steps for data analytics, and these are the steps for data analysis, right? So in data analytics, we first evaluate what's the case at hand. Based on that, we try to identify what data can be helpful, and we try to gather it. Once we gather it, we kind of clean it and validate it. Okay, like I said, cleansing is very important. If data is inappropriate or improper or inconsistent or something, our overall purpose will not be fulfilled. Then we aggregate the data, like create kind of summary, percentage, maximum, minimum, average, and all that. Then we finally do data analysis. So the process of data analysis is involved in data analytics itself. And then we do the data visualization, which is more or less of a chart. So we provide useful charts to make inferential decisions, right? And finally, we utilize the result to make decisions. Whereas in data analysis, we just gather data, we scrub the data. So scrubbing is also kind of cleansing only. Then we analyze the data, and finally, we try to interpret the data. Okay. Now, if we try to go a little practically with data analytics has statistics and mathematics, which is very essential. We are going to cover all these three one by one. So in statistics and mathematics, the statistics itself is very important and useful in terms of engineering and problem solving. If you talk about mathematics here, we are primarily concerned about linear algebra, probability theory, and calculus. These three form pioneering, mathematics for artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning. There is a famous popular paper in Elsewhere which says mathematics and AI are two branches of the same tree. So AI cannot be effectively implemented without proper use of mathematics, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to do Excel for basic, moderate, and advanced level. Okay, and maybe most of you will be pretty much aware of how to do all this. But to bring everyone on the same page, I am going to cover a little bit of all this. I am basically going to cover the formatting of data part here. So when you are doing currency level thing, it is better to have apply currency sort of thing here. If there are no value after decimal point, it is better to remove all this, right? And also when you are performing analytics or something, it is better to learn conditional formatting also. That also gives us good kind of insight. Let's say if we have these are marks of students, right? Very simple example I'm trying to give. And if you use color scale, what happens is this is the minimum marks, this is the maximum marks, is still like second rank or something, and these two are intermediate marks. So color scales gives us better insight than just having plain vanilla kind of values. Okay, so this might seem trivial when you're looking at small data set here, but if you have larger data set and if you do all this, it will be very much helpful, right? Okay. So opening, saving, printing, selecting ranges, all these are pretty much familiar to all of us. So I'm not going to repeat those contents. We'll switch to moderate stuff. So even adding numbers, then subtracting, multiplying, dividing, mean, mode, and all that. Let's do a little bit of those. So if I want sum of this, there are multiple ways. One is to simply press this auto sum button here, and if I click this, I'll get that sum. Other ways to write formula directly. I mean manually typing the formula, selecting cells specifically, and then pressing enter. The other way is also to type the formula, like this is Lth column and 17th row, so I'll say L17 colon, because I want to take range, so I'll say P and 17, so I'll write P17, which will give me the same results. Okay, So also you can trace down from where this value came through formulas and trace precedents. So it will show us from where this value came off, right? So these are the useful tools you can use in case you want. Then VLOOKUP is very useful. We can use VLOOKUP with the help of, let's say, okay, let's copy this data from horizontal to vertical. This operation is called as transpose. Most of you would be pretty much aware of it. So let's say this is student ID and this is marks he has got. So if I enter student ID here and if I want to display marks here, what I can do is I will use VLOOKUP. Now what is VLOOKUP is vertical lookup. So what I will do is which lookup value you are searching for or looking for. So I'll say whatever value coming here. Okay. Now where is table array? That's what it is asking for. So our table array is this much as of now. Now which column you want to display? So that is second column. So I'll say second. And you want exact match or approximate match. So if it is numerical value and it is mostly integer, then it doesn't matter you make true or false. But if it is decimal pointed value, I mean float values, in that case you need to be a little cautious. Okay. So because we haven't provided any value here, we are not getting anything. Let's say I write 2 and press enter, then the marks of second student is appearing here. Same way if I type 5, then marks of the student is same, so I'll say 4 and I'm getting his marks. So that way we can use VLOOKUP for looking up values from larger table, and even we can create UI and buttons and all that, but that's not currently the content, so I'm skipping that part. I have this habit of pressing escape, so I beg your pardon. Now I will continue with the next thing. So if you want to go for advanced analytics, there are tools available in the market. One of the most popular is Excel Miner, which is actually deprecated name. It is now known as Analytics Solver. So it is inbuilt with Excel. You don't have to additionally install it. But if you want very advanced feature than what is provided basically, you should visit this URL and they'll help you to do even more stuff with this tool. Then there is Risk Solver platform, Premium Risk Solver platform, and Analysis Tool Pack. Now how to add one or more of these that is shown in the upcoming slides. So you right click anywhere in the Excel and there is option called Customize the ribbon. If you click that, you have something called developer. So in Excel options also you can go to this one and tick on developer. Whenever you click that, you get this Excel add-ons available. When you click on Excel add-ons, you get this solver add-on to tick. Even if you want analytical tool pack with Visual Basic, you should select this. Without Visual Basic, you should select this, and you simply press OK, and that tab will appear along with these other tabs, right? I can show you practically also, but because I already have this, okay, let me show this. If you click on this customize ribbon, this developer and add-on tools you should select, and when you click that, you have one additional tab called developer here, right? Here is Excel add-ons, and if you click that, you can have this one. You can also select others and it will install all those. Okay. Now if you go to data tab, there is a solver and data analysis available for you. Okay. So covariance, correlation, everything is here, ANOVA, histogram and everything, right? So with the help of these tools, you can perform machine learning or data analytics to great extent within Excel itself, instead of using R or Python or MATLAB or something. Of course, they provide higher level of functionality, but to some extent, you can also fulfill your machine learning or data analytics requirement with the help of Excel itself. That's what I'm trying to, make out as a point. Now, for various charts that helps us provide data visualization, which is part of data analytics, we'll specifically cover all these chart types one by one, and for that I have prepared one Excel sheet. So over here, let us start with bar chart. Okay, so I have taken some people and their net worth, and if we want bar chart for this one, I will click insert and go to chart, and here we have this kind of bar chart, and you also get variety from Excel, right? So this is bar chart, and when you look at column chart, you will find almost similar. Let's take that also into consideration. So if I click on insert, I go to this one, and if I select this, so essentially if you try to see, bar chart is more of horizontal and column chart is more of vertical, then question might be troubling to some people's mind is when to use bar chart and when to use column chart, or what are the difference. So bar chart is essentially used when you have longer labels to display, and column chart is more suitable when you have kind of smaller names. I don't know that sounds interesting to you or not, but that's what I have read and learned. Now there is another type called pie chart, and in pie chart you again go to insert, and there are multiple charts. From that, this pie sort of symbol is there, circular. If you select this, you will find this, right? If you want labels on it, you can select like this or like this. Okay, so these charts helps decision makers. By looking at it, they can come to know what is spending more, let's say, expense to their industry, or to us which subject is getting good score, or don't know what. But such examples can help you figure out what is going on inside, instead of just looking at these data. Although it is small data set again, so you may not find it quite useful when you look at this chart, but when we are talking about industry and all that, the larger data, it is more difficult for them to make decisions, and in those times data visualization tools such as these charts helps them making better decision. Okay, now if we compare this result, again we will go to insert, and there will be an area chart, right? So if you talk about 2D area, if you look at this chart, what happens is, so college A, they have kind of slightly increasing and then steady result, whereas this one has grown a little and approaching near to the college A. So those kind of result can be better inferred with the help of area chart, right? There is one scatter chart, right? So this is a good example for us to understand. So let's say there is one class which is having this score, this scatter chart, right? So what happens is, as the number of tests grows, there is no uniform increase or decrease or any kind of pattern with the data. But if you look at the second class with this test number, you would find that this chart has good correlation, and the result is overall gradually increasing with the number of tests. So number of tests are actually benefiting class B than class A. That way we were able to figure out with the help of scatter chart, I mean how the data was scattered or spread. Okay, this is final chart. So if you look at orange dots, they are increasing with the number of tests, whereas class A has nothing sort of accurate improvement with the as the test increases, right? So these are the kind of charts we are looking at. Now two charts remains. One is histogram. So you can see that as the students are increasing, the total is approaching 100, right? But the interesting thing is maximum marks is obtained by 50 to 60 range of marks. I mean maximum number of students belongs to this range, and the most important range, which is 90 to 100, has very few students in it, right? So histogram kind of tells us how much data is distributed in what pattern, right? In what range like we saw in interquartile range, this also shares what amount of data is shared in what categories, right, or what range. And this is interquartile range, interquartile chart. Let's do it one more time. So although this is not pretty much useful kind of quartile chart, but this also tells how number of students are distributed across a range of marks. The standard quartile chart has details like this. So this is 0, let's say this is 25%, 50%, 75% and 100%. So such kind of chart are more or less of a quartile chart, but to give you brief introduction about quartile chart, this is how it appears. Okay. Now we will look at the artificial intelligence part. In this, we first of all will give some definition and what are the popular AI algorithms. Okay, so whole this training you are going to be focused more on these parts than data analytics. So artificial intelligence has sub branch called machine learning, and machine learning itself has sub branch called deep learning. So AI is more or less like a computer or a robot controlled by computer that can perform tasks like human does, but without human intervention. Or if a computer program has human intelligence and decision making, we can say it is artificial intelligence. Now there is a very interesting case where there is a computer and there is a human and there is an interrogator. What interrogator does is it asks the questions to computer and a person, but this person is not aware which is computer. I mean, in this blue room we have computer or human, and in this green room she doesn't know if there is a person or a computer. But with the at the end of all responses, if interrogator is not capable of distinguishing between where is computer and where is human, then such program is said to be having artificial intelligence. This test is known as Turing test. Okay. So what Turing test says is, if I am sitting in this room and there are two adjacent rooms, I am asking same question to, I am passing my question to both the rooms and I am getting answer from both the rooms, and at the end of some questions I am not able to figure out where is computer and where is person, the human involved, then the program which is answering me said to have good artificial intelligence. So that's what Turing test is all about. So some of the popular AI algorithms are classification algorithms, regression algorithms, clustering algorithms, and in that we have set of other algorithms as well. So today itself you are going to learn regression algorithms, linear regression algorithms after inauguration. In classification algorithms we have naive Bayes. So all these algorithms, most of these algorithms are going to be repeated in the next section of machine learning. So I'll directly switch to machine learning section. So machine learning definitions were given by two people. One is Arthur Samuel and another is Tom Mischel. So Arthur Samuel says machine learning is an application of AI that provides systems the ability to automatically learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed. So let's say if we want to develop and personal assistant, software personal assistant like Google Assistant or Alexa or Siri or something. At that time, what is the very old approach? If we travel, 200 years ago, and if you want to write such program, what we will do is we will write if else's, right? Like user says this, then we will answer this. If user says that, we will answer that. So that way we have to write all the test cases for each and every scenario possible for us. And if a new scenario is coming up, we have to write another else if case. So that's what Arthur Samuel tried to say, that we don't need to explicitly program, and if we can develop such program, then we can say it is kind of machine learning. The another definition given by Tom Mischel was a computer program is said to learn from experience E with respect to some class of tasks T and performance measure P if its performance at task T as measured by P improves with experience E. So at the end, what Tom Mitchell tried to say is, we have a program, it has some efficiency with task T. Now, if this efficiency is improving with time, then we can say machine is learning. So overall, we can say that if performance is improving without human intervention, then we can say a machine is actually learning. That's why it is called as machine learning. The image shown at the left is a very popular machine learning course on Coursera, taught by Andrew Ng sir. It is very popular, and he is kind of said very, very knowledgeable, and you know, there are many fans for machine learning for this course. Okay, some machine learning algorithms, if we try to say, there is supervised learning, there is unsupervised learning, and there is reinforcement learning. To distinguish supervised and unsupervised, we have this image at the left. So in supervised, we have label or target labels, we can say, already known to us, and based on that, we try to classify. For example, if a patient has cancer or not, that will be predicted by machine learning. So it's a kind of supervised learning. Then if you want to predict the price of a house, then it is a supervised learning, because we know what we want to predict, yes or no, or some lakhs of or crores of value. So in those cases, we are aware of what is our target label. So that is called supervised learning. And there are scenarios where we do not have any target label, we don't know what classes we want to classify in. In that case, we have unsupervised learning. So in supervised learning, we have regression, that I already said. We have that session after inauguration session. Then in classification, we try to classify in two or multiple classes. If it is two classes, it is called binary classification. If there are multiple classes, then it is called as multi-class classification. So to classify our input or data, we have algorithms like logistic regression, Bayes classifier, decision trees, SVM, that is support vector machine, KNN, which is K nearest neighbors, right, and many others. So in unsupervised learning, there is something called clustering. So what we try to do is, we have a set of points and we try to create group of them, right? So that is called as clustering. For clustering, we have many algorithms. One is k-means clustering, then hierarchical clustering, then there is density based scanning, so dbScan clustering, and a few more. Then there is something called association rule mining, which says some items are occurring frequently with each other. So let's say if you talk about DMart or Amazon or something, there are certain items when we buy that, there are strong chances that another item will be bought along with it. For example, if you buy a computer, there are chances that you will buy a printer or extension board or something. If you buy, let's say, aloo tikki, there are chances that you will buy cheese slices also. So that way, association rule mining tries to develop hidden association between two items in item set. So there are two popular association rule mining algorithms, a priori and FP growth. Then there is dimensionality reduction, which is very popular. So what happens is, we get a data set, let's say having 100 columns. So all 100 columns are not equally important to us. So what we try to do is, we try to eliminate some of the columns or dimensions to say, so that our overall effort and computations are reduced. Okay, so dimensionality reduction helps us doing that. For dimensionality reduction, we have algorithms like PCA, which is principal component analysis. Then there is RFE, recursive feature eliminations. And there is a third type of machine learning algorithms, which is reinforcement learning. In this one, what we do is, a computer learns itself, and we have profit or loss mechanism. Okay, so we kind of give punishment or encouragement or reward sort of thing in reinforcement learning. So Google a few years back developed a chess player program with the help of this reinforcement learning, which beat the chess champion of the world. Okay, so what that program did is, it kept on playing with itself, and it learned where is he losing and which are the moves that is giving him kind of benefit. So in that case, the type of program of machine learning used was reinforcement learning. Then there is deep learning, which is very popular in machine learning. So what happens is, as the amount of data increases, the machine learning algorithms become, the performance of machine learning algorithms becomes steady after some time. But in case of deep learning, more and more data you give to deep learning algorithm, the performance gradually increases, right? So what is difference between machine learning and deep learning? That is also important to note down and learn. Deep learning is a subfield of machine learning concerned with algorithm inspired by structure and function of brain called artificial neural network. So in deep learning, we try to mimic the human brain, its brain cells, and try to explore and learn the way how our brain learns. So talk about a small kid, more and more we give examples to the kid, more and more he will learn. So if we will keep on showing cat and dogs to a children, a kid, what will happen is he will kind of store images in his mind, and next time he sees a dog or cat, he'll be able to figure out if it is a cat or dog. Okay, but the limitation of deep learning is, if the child or a kid sees a cheetah, so he might say it's a cat and not dog, although it's not cat, but it is quite resembling to the cat's features. So that's what happens in deep learning. Now, machine learning algorithms works well on small data and perform better and requires less computing power compared to deep learning. So if you have small data set and if you want good performance, it is better to go for machine learning algorithms, whereas in deep learning, larger data set is kind of essential for good performance. Okay. Deep learning algorithms, there is a huge list, as you can see in the left side image. So perceptron is the simplest of all. I'll try to give you a little closer look. So a perceptron is nothing but single node which is taking several inputs and processing it and finally giving some output. Then a little advance of it is feed forward. Then there is recurrent neural network and all that. Okay. So if you are working on very basic task of neural network, with the help of neural network, you should go for ANN. If you are working on images or something, CNN is advised. If you are working on time series or something, LSTM is more preferred. And if you are working on natural language processing or something, RNN is preferred, recurrent neural network and all. So these are the kind of deep learning studies. Now let us take a case study which involves several machine learning algorithms and two deep learning algorithms. So this is something I have worked on. So I have captured some brain signals, which is called EEG, electroencephalograph. Then fed it to Arduino programming with the help of electrode and cables. Then I pre-processed it, like I said, cleansing and all. Then I fed it to two possibilities. One is I generated statistical parameters, and I also went for the signal values to image conversion. We'll see this in the upcoming slides, but to give summary, so statistical parameters were used for machine learning algorithms and artificial neural network, whereas signal to image the images which we received from signal after conversion, that were those were fed to CNN. Okay. So this is how I kind of acquired those signals and fed it to Arduino. These are the statistical parameters I generated for machine learning algorithms. They were average, minimum, maximum, range count, then standard deviation, etc. I also did data cleansing and outlier removal. Then I went for machine learning technique, but before going to machine learning techniques, like I said, not all features are equally important. I eliminated some with the help of PCA, which is principal component analysis, and recursive feature elimination. So whichever optimal attributes I figured out to be important, I took it forward. And then I run logistic regression, linear discriminant analysis, naive Bayes, then KNN, SVM, decision trees, and I found various accuracies with it. Then I also went for ANN, which is deep learning algorithm, and I was able to attain 89% accuracy with that. So this is what I have summarized in this table. Okay. So these were my brain signals. These were the values of it. I converted it into images. Okay, so each value of the signal corresponds to 1 pixel in this image, and accordingly I went kind of raster scan, and after doing that I was able to attain accuracy of 97%, you can say, maximum. There is something called activation function, which is at the end of every neuron when we talk about deep learning. So any neuron, when it decides to trigger some output, there is an activation function involved which decides how much value to pass on or how much value to cut down or chop down, right? So that activation function, the list of those activation functions are listed here in this table. So linear, exponential, 10x, softmax, sigmoid, ReLU, and this is what I developed in the process, Cyanonential. So even if you do not understand much of it, it's a kind of, like I said, introduction to introduction. As you will proceed with the training, you will get more insight about what everything I talked about, and maybe you will be able to recall some of things I said. So if I talk about case study summary, I had taken small easy data set and I was able to get 99% accuracy. But as the data set increased, performance was not as appreciable as it was mentioned here. So I went for larger data set and proposed a new activation function which gave sufficient accuracy, and I was able to binary classify. So if I give one-liner summary of this case study, with the help of research I did, I was able to figure out if a person is thinking yes or no. So it can be used in lie detection or basic Boolean kind of actions. So that was all about that case study. And if I summarize overall content I covered, so we talked about data analytics, what is difference between data analytics and all. We also saw a little of data mining, statistical and maths involved. We did a little Excel, including some formulas and those charts. Then we talk about AI. We talked about AI and machine learning, deep learning, and the brain-computer interface using CNN. That case study was also covered. These are references I took for preparing this presentation, and you are free to ask any questions if you have.
Okay, dear participants, now you may ask the questions if you are having any.
Sir, myself Pankaj Prajapati.
Yes, sir.
Can you give some difference between machine learning and optimization algorithms?
Yeah, in machine learning, you are more or less involved about teaching computer how to perform certain tasks, and there are always some data which is to be given to make machine learn. In case of optimization, you may not always need to provide a large data set or something. And machine learning is more or less about, yeah, you can say optimization is inherently or in the background involved for machine learning also. At the end, you want to optimize your performance and try to give more or more accurate or better results even in machine learning. So you can say optimization is running in the background for machine learning. You are always trying to achieve optimization in machine learning also.
Okay. One more question.
Yes, sir.
If you have read literature regarding optimization algorithm, there are number of optimization algorithm, PSO, differential evolution algorithm, focus search.
Right.
So that
Right.
can be all are used for the machine learning or not?
So in machine learning, like I said, there are multiple algorithms. So which algorithm you take, how it is performing, how it is optimizing, that you need to learn. So for example, Adam is an optimizer which is used in deep learning. So I don't know why, but everybody has since years followed Adam optimizer only. And I read about theory of it. It is very effective and efficient. That's why they are following. So you need to learn about what technique is in picture, and based on that you need to decide what level of optimization it is achieving, and if there are other optimization algorithms available which can very well fit with the problem at hand or machine learning algorithm we have picked, then you can apply those optimization algorithms to those machine algorithms also.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I have one question, sir.
Sure, sir.
Sir, actually, why we will distinguish the deep learning from machine learning? Because the deep learning and machine learning are correlated to each other. So, is it possible deep learning without machine learning?
So in one slide, I tried to point out some difference, and I will add a few to those. So the ones which were present on that slide are, so deep learning require larger data set. If I will show my son only one cat and one dog, he might not be able to distinguish in future. So deep learning requires very large data set. If you give small data set, you will not be able to predict good results in future. I mean, for unforeseen data, deep learning may not work effectively. And like I said, deep learning totally tries to mimic human brain behavior, and based on that, it tries to give the output or classification or result. Whereas in machine learning, we do not need to have large data set, and it doesn't have anything like human brain, kind of mimic or something kind of functionality. It is its own ways. It is more or less in statistics and maths than human brain. So there is difference between both of them. Although deep learning is again a sub branch of machine learning, but the deep learning algorithms are far more different than deep learning, and it is obvious for discussion sake and all. But like I said, in that Venn diagram, AI has sub part as machine learning, and machine learning has sub part as deep learning. So essentially, both are, to some extent, overlapped, you can say.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir. This is Hetal Pandya here.
Yes, madam.
In the last slide, you shown us about your case studies. You worked upon some kind of research, right? So I
Right.
am much interested in knowing more about these things. So can you go somewhat deeper? What kind of crux or what kind of solutions you got after
Sure,
this?
ma'am.
All the
Sure,
yeah.
sure, ma'am. So what I did is, these are my brain signals which I received with the help of Electrode and Arduino and VB.NET. So these signals, these were the values of respective signals, and from these values, I generated these images. So I fed these images to CNN, because after all, CNN requires images as input. So these images were given to CNN. After CNN, what happened? Like I said, there was small data set. There were only 84 samples, so I got 99.8% accuracy. But the limitation was, as the data set size was increased, the performance was not appreciable, and therefore when I increased data set size, this accuracy declined drastically. So to overcome that problem, what I did is I proposed one activation function which is sign on initial, which is mentioned here. So it was able to get 99% accuracy in some cases, and in my case it was able to get some accuracy as well, as it is seen here, right? So it was attaining 88% approx accuracy. So that's what I came out with.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sir, this is good morning, sir. This is Dinesh, sir.
Activation function.
Sorry, sir.
Sir, can you tell me the step for developing our own activation function like you had did?
Yes, sir. So for activation function, I was trying to see what is, I mean how brain signals were, going on. You are biomedical person, as I know you, sir. So I tried to figure out how these brain signals were working, and I also went into the internal structure of CNN, how they were doing the masking and filters and all that. So based on that, I was able to find out the limitations of these 5 activation functions. They were not passing the values as it is required, aligning to the data set. So with the help of this Sino-Nensal data set, it is actually, let me show the formula for the Sino-Nensal. It is e raised to x into sin x. So this is the formula for my activation function, which I used and was able to achieve good result. So yeah, you can to some extent say it was a trial and error method also, and it was something that exponential gave kind of you know interest to me to perform with some experimental values of mathematically, you can say.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sir, good morning. My question is, like, what proposing any solution using, let's say, deep learning, what are the effective way of identifying number of hidden layers? What are the criteria that we can think of?
Right, sir. Actually, how many number of nodes should be there in each layer and how many layers should be there is depending on how complex your input data is, how complex your task at hand is. That is first thing you should consider. And second thing is, it is more or less trial and error again. If you go to playground of Google, there is playground of Google given by them. So if you go there and there are 4 data set, I would say, given there, and if you play with them, you get some insight of what is happening when you increase some number of nodes and what happens when you increase number of layers. So if you simply want to predict AND function, there is logical AND function in digital electronics. So if it is as simple as that, there is one node sufficient for us to decide based on input what should be the output. But if it is XOR, you need to have at least 2 nodes in a layer, in a hidden layer. So as the complexity of your logic or input or prediction, if you want more and more prediction capability for complex solution, your number of layers and your number of nodes per hidden layer may increase or decrease. So it's obviously experimental thing. There is no hard code rule. You have to do this much only, or these many nodes are always required for these kind of problems. There is no such harsh rules.
Thank you, sir.
Ghanshyam, sir?
Is there any other question?
Sir,
Yeah,
yes,
sir.
one question, sir.
Yes,
One
sir.
question, sir. So,
Sure.
sir, actually, activation function will be choose mainly on trial and error method, or the any other technique is there? How to choose the activation function?
So far, whatever research I have covered, I have always gone for trial and error method, because some problems are very well solved by some activation function. Although, if you are going for multi-class classification, the output layer must have softmax function. So that is kind of de facto for yours. And if you are doing for binary classification, they prefer kind of ReLU or sigmoid. It is experience based thing. That's what I'm trying to say. There is still no rule book saying this thing. But if you are going for multi-class classification, your last output layer should have softmax as activation function. And if you are doing binary, ReLU or sigmoid are preferred activation functions.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir.
Actually, suppose I'm having one, one problem of comparing the brain tumor type of some work with
Right.
K-means and adaptive, some way of adaptive K-means. So on which criteria I should actually look at the performance? I mean, what to actually exactly look for in this?
So I am more inclined or attached with deep learning. So I would say that your input data has to be some medical imaging,
Yeah,
right?
that's one, let's say, MRI data, right?
Right, right. So in that case, the first advice from my side, to whatever knowledge I have, I would say is to go for CNN. So CNN is basically for, you have images you feed it to CNN, and it kind of learns from images, and finally it tries to predict if a patient has a tumor or not. So more images you have, better it will learn. And like earlier discussion, you should try out with a number of layers. I mean, increasing number of layers, or increasing or decreasing number of nodes in each layer, and try to see what accuracy you attain at the end.
Yeah. No. Can I extend a little bit this question, if you don't mind?
You can, or otherwise, I'll share my email ID. You can carry on the question. We can carry out question answer or discussion over there.
Okay then. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for such a wonderful session. Dear participants, we would like to end this session here because at 11 o'clock we are having a common inaugural session at Atal. So we will share a link there in a WhatsApp group. So all are requested to join that session at sharp at 11 o'clock. And after that, at 12:30, we will start our second session of the day. So we again request you to join 15 minutes earlier, around 12:15 for the second sessions. Okay. So thank you very much, DB Mehta, sir, for such a wonderful session. Thank you, sir.